Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin Podcast. I am a woman on a mission to help you get the Zettelkasten of your dreams on your work table beside you. We are in a series on writing from the Zettelkasten, and today we're going to talk about strategies that help you get the most creativity out of your Zettelkasten. And boy, have I got some ideas for you, because creativity can be sparked. And you don't have to just sit there and try without a strategy. A strategy will get you a lot farther. So come on over to the down-facing camera and let me share with you my list of strategies, and then I'm going to focus in on one of them and go over the steps that I use to help squeeze out creativity when I just need a little extra zing to get going. See you over there. Well, let me share with you some of my strategies for working with creative output. That if you have a strategy, it beats just trying. So here are some of the strategies that I like to draw on to spark my creativity. The first one is to fill in the gaps. As I'm doing my writing, have I noticed any area that I'm weak? It's always a good idea to have a question list handy of things that you might want to research. This is the kind of thing that I use. I like to use sticky notes because I can move them around and add them to my to-do clipboard or to my planner when the job is done. Complete a matrix is another thing that I like to do. Now that one might need a little bit of explanation. Let me give you an example. It will show you what I mean. Okay. Here's an example of a matrix that relates to my area of research, which is on using character traits to be able to improve your writing in the area of creating more believable characters. So I'm working on my newsletter that's going to come out in the month of June. Towards the end of the month, my newsletter will come out, and the topic is modesty. Modesty is closely related to meekness. And so I'm going to want to make sure that I cover all of the standard bases for both modesty and meekness. Magnificence is another one that I definitely want to compare to modesty on all of these traits. Having a matrix like this where I can simply go through and make sure that, yes, I have covered all of these bases for all of these character traits, that helps me with completeness. But the other thing that it does is it makes it much easier for me to be creative because I only need to work on one little section at a time. I don't need to be trying to cover the whole gamut of how this character trait compares to this one or this one. I'm zeroing in on one state in the matrix. Of course, what you put in the rows and columns of your matrix would be what you're writing about. The main focus of my podcast today is going to be how I use a question list to help me with my creativity. And so I'm going to hold off on that one. The other method is using a pattern language. This one is fairly new to me. I greatly enjoyed Christopher Alexander's book, The Timeless Way of Building, where he talks about creating a pattern language for architecture. Then he actually does it. Well, architect Michael Dean was quite familiar with this pattern language, and he extended it to having a pattern language for essay writing. I've mentioned it before in this series, and I will include once again links to some essays that he's written on how to use a pattern language for essay writing. And I am of the belief that that pattern language is valuable for all kinds of writing, so I encourage you to check it out. Well, today we're going to be talking about using a question list for writing. And this question list comes from another source that I've mentioned several times, the YouTube channel of Mel Jeffcoat. He also has a newsletter where he goes into greater detail. Now here's a little zero draft note that I made while I was working on my newsletter. When you're dealing with creative writing, sometimes you have to wring it out of your brain. Well, you probably know what I mean. You stand there with your pen hovering over the paper and it's crickets. Well, that's where question list comes in because it gives you something to think about. It's like candy to your subconscious mind. So questions provide enough specificity that you can interest your subconscious mind in the question and actually get some creative output coming out pretty quickly. So I'm going to run through the 10 list of questions that come from Ramon Llull. Again, you can check those out on Mel Jeffcoat's YouTube channel. And I'm going to talk about how I use them for my writing and throw in a little bit about how they can be used for any writing. The first question is whether. For fiction writing, I use that question for suspense. Will the hero do the thing he needs to do? Will the villain get away with doing what he wants to do? Whether can also be used for nonfiction writing if you're throwing into suspense whether a question will be resolved in time. Whether is always a great one for throwing in suspense. The next question I ponder is what? How will the story unfold? What's going to happen? This is a very basic question for fiction writing. What's going to take place? But what is also one of the most essential questions when you're doing nonfiction writing? What on earth are you talking about? The next question is of what? If the right choice is made, what motivated it? Out of what basis did the right choice come? And by this, I'm trying to say, have you justified your hero's action? He did the right thing, but he hasn't been doing the right thing all along. Have you motivated his action properly? And for nonfiction writing, of what is of enormous importance. Where did your ideas come from? This is descendancy. This is all of your attribution. This is your chain of evidence. This is of enormous importance in nonfiction writing, and is surprisingly important in fiction writing as well. The question of why. Why do you want this to happen in the story? What do you hope the reader will get out of having this experience along with your character? Why are you writing this? But this question of why is equally important for nonfiction writing. How much? How much has to do with what I call in my line of work scale. How important is this decision to your story? The weight is equally important in a nonfiction writing because there what you're trying to do with your scale is how important is what you're trying to say that your reader get it. If you have the key to solving an important problem, that scale is heavy and it's going to be of great importance to your reader. And that's what you're going to be thinking about when you're thinking about the question, how much? Next, the question of what kind. What kind of behavior will the character perform in response to the decision? What category of behavior will he draw from? Circumvent the villain and get around the problem. There are many possible ways that your hero can respond to the challenge of the story, but obviously this is equally important when you're coming to your nonfiction writing. What kind of solution are you looking for? So what kind of solutions will help your problem that you're solving with your nonfiction writing? And what kind will help you get your creative process going? When? When in the story will this struggle take place or this decision take place? When is vital if you're writing a fiction story, but if you're writing nonfiction, when did the problem arise? When does the solution have to be in place? There's lots of time-based questions around when. That should get your juices flowing. Where? Where will the character be located when the challenge occurs? Well, where does the problem have its impact in a nonfiction story? Where is the seat of change? Where can we attack the problem? How? How will the challenge come about? What will make it become a crisis? How will a solution come about? Will it be in time to solve the crisis? Will it be strong enough to solve the crisis? How will you bring your solution about? With what? What will the character draw on to implement his decision? Will he use his history, his training, his powerful level of commitment? The list is endless of the things that the hero of your story can draw on to meet the challenge. With what will you meet the challenge of your nonfiction problem? With what will you approach it? How will you bring to bear your solution? So there's 10 questions for you. And just like your matrix, the value of having a question isn't so much which exact question you have on your list, but the fact that you can zero in on one that makes it small enough that you can tackle it and challenging enough that you can sink your teeth into it. And that is the easiest way to get creativity out of your mind. Trying hard helps. Trying hard works. Having a strategy makes everything easier. Well, I hope that strategy of using a question list to help you spark your creativity will prove useful to you. Those questions can just be used as a starting list, and you can make your own as you go along. But I hope that in going over how I use each question and how I tailor that question to the kind of work that I'm doing will give you a few ideas to get you started rather than just saying, oh, make up a list of questions. Again, it's part of having a strategy. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.